the fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Marcus pressed his palm against the cold waiting room wall, trying to steady himself. His daughter's labored breathing still echoed in his ears, and the paramedic's words kept replaying in his mind like a broken record. "We're doing everything we can." 3 words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. He'd lost his job 2 months ago. The insurance lapsed 3 weeks after that, and now here he stood, watching through a window as strangers fought to save the only person in the world who still called him Dad. The clipboard in his hand trembled as he stared at the medical forms, each blank line a reminder that he couldn't afford to fill them in. That's when he felt it, a gentle hand on his shoulder, light as a whisper but somehow steadying, and a soft voice asked, "Are you okay?" Marcus turned to find a woman in scrubs, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. Her name tag read Claire, volunteer, and there was something about the way she looked at him that made his carefully constructed walls begin to crack. He opened his mouth to say he was fine, to give the automatic response he'd perfected over years of struggling alone. But instead what came out was the truth. "My daughter can't breathe right," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Asthma attack, bad one, and I don't know if I can pay for any of this." Claire didn't flinch, didn't offer him the pitying look he'd grown to dread from social workers and bill collectors. Instead, she guided him to a chair and sat beside him. "Tell me about her," she said simply, and something in those 4 words opened a floodgate. Marcus found himself talking about Emma, his 7-year-old firecracker who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. When she grew up, who'd been drawing pictures of a T-Rex for her school project when the attack hit. He talked about how she'd lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago, how they'd been barely holding on ever since, how he'd been applying to 30 jobs a week but couldn't catch a break in this economy. Claire listened without interrupting, her presence a steady anchor in his storm. When he finally ran out of words, she squeezed his hand and said, "Wait here." Then she disappeared through a door marked "Staff Only," and Marcus was left alone with his fear and the ticking clock on the wall. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Marcus watched families come and go, some crying, some laughing in relief, all of them seemingly more prepared for crisis than he was. He thought about the eviction notice in his glove compartment, about the empty refrigerator at home, about all the ways he'd failed as a father. He was so lost in his spiral of self-recrimination that he didn't notice. Claire had returned until she was standing right in front of him. "Your daughter is stabilized," she said, and Marcus felt his knees buckle with relief. "The doctors are finishing up now. She's going to be okay." But there was something else in her expression, something he couldn't quite read. "Come with me for a minute. There's someone who wants to meet you." Claire led him through a maze of corridors to a small office where a silver-haired man in an expensive suit sat, waiting. Dr. Richard Morrison, according to the nameplate on the desk, Chief of Medicine. Marcus's stomach dropped. This was it. They were going to tell him about the astronomical bill, maybe threaten legal action for bringing his daughter in without insurance. But Dr. Morrison stood up and extended his hand with a warm smile. "Mr. Jackson, please sit down. Claire here has told me about your situation." He gestured to the volunteer, who had taken a seat in the corner. 15 years ago, I was in a car accident on Highway 40. Bad one. My car flipped 3 times and I was trapped inside, bleeding out. A woman stopped. She was the only one who stopped out of dozens of cars that passed by. She held my hand, kept me conscious, called for help, and stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. She saved my life that day. Marcus nodded politely, confused about where this was going. Dr. Morrison continued. "I never got her name. I was in and out of consciousness. And by the time I recovered enough to ask, she was gone. But I never forgot what she did. She taught me something profound about the kind of person I wanted to be. After I recovered, I established a fund here at this hospital. It's designed to help families in crisis, people who fall through the cracks, who need medical care but can't afford it." The doctor pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "Your daughter's treatment is completely covered, all of it. And we're going to make sure she has the medications she needs, including an updated inhaler and a nebulizer for home use. Plus, I'm putting you in touch with our social services coordinator who can help you Navigate some resources for employment and housing assistance. Marcus stared at the folder, unable to process what he was hearing. I don't understand. Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us. Claire spoke up from her corner. That's exactly why, she said softly. That woman who saved Dr. Morrison didn't know him either. She stopped because it was the right thing to do. Because we're all connected in ways we don't always see. Because your daughter deserves a chance, and so do you. I can never repay this, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now, unchecked and unashamed. Dr. Morrison shook his head. You're not supposed to repay it. You're supposed to pay it forward. Someday, when you're back on your feet, and you will be, you'll see someone who needs help. Maybe it'll be something small, maybe something big. And you'll remember this moment, and you'll stop. You'll be someone's miracle, just like that woman was mine. They let Marcus sit with Emma while she slept, her breathing finally steady and peaceful. He held her small hand and watched her chest rise and fall with a regular rhythm that felt like the most beautiful music he'd ever heard. A nurse brought him coffee and a sandwich, refusing his attempt to decline. Doctor's orders, she said with a wink. You can't take care of her if you don't take care of yourself. As dawn broke through the hospital windows, painting everything in shades of gold and pink, Emma's eyes fluttered open. Daddy? She whispered, her voice hoarse but strong. I'm here, baby girl. I'm right here. Did I miss my dinosaur presentation? Marcus laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he'd thought had gone dark. We'll get you there, kiddo. I promise. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the lobby of a tech company downtown, wearing a donated suit from the hospital's clothing drive and carrying a portfolio of his design work. He'd just finished an interview for a junior graphic designer position, not his old salary, but a real start. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire, who'd become something like a guardian angel, checking in regularly. How'd it go? Good, I think, he typed back. Then added, thank you. For everything. Her response came quickly. Thank her, whoever she was. And remember what Dr. Morrison said? Marcus smiled and pocketed his phone. He was walking to the parking garage when he saw her, a young woman sitting on the curb, maybe early 20s, crying into her hands. Her car was nearby with the hood up, smoke billowing from the engine, and her frustration was palpable even from a distance. He could have kept walking. He was running late to pick up Emma from school, and he had his own problems to worry about. The old Marcus, the one from 3 months ago, might have convinced himself it wasn't his responsibility, but he wasn't that Marcus anymore. Excuse me, he said gently, approaching her. Car trouble? I'm pretty good with engines. Mind if I take a look? She looked up at him, her eyes red and wary, clearly surprised that anyone had stopped. I can't afford a mechanic right now, she said, her voice catching. I just started a new job and I can't be late. And everything is just falling apart. Marcus smiled and rolled up his sleeves. Let's see what we can do, no charge. Sometimes people just need a little help, you know. As he popped the hood and assessed the problem, a loose radiator hose, easy fix. He thought about Claire, about Dr. Morrison, about a woman whose name no one knew who'd stopped on a highway 15 years ago and changed the trajectory of countless lives. He thought about the invisible threads that connected all of them, strangers helping strangers, kindness rippling outward in ways none of them could fully comprehend. You know what? The young woman said as he tightened the hose. My grandmother always told me that angels walk among us. I never really believed it until today. Marcus paused, wrench in hand, and felt something shift inside his chest. Not an angel, he wanted to say. Just a man who was saved by human kindness and who finally understood that the greatest power any of us have is the power to stop, to notice, to care. I'm just paying it forward, he said instead, and helped her get back on the road. That evening, he picked up Emma from school and watched her bounce excitedly about her dinosaur project, which had earned her an A and a spot in the science fair. They stopped at the grocery store. He had money now, not much but enough, and he let her pick out her favorite cereal. As they walked to the car, she slipped her hand into his. Dad? She asked. Why are you smiling so much? Marcus looked down at his daughter. This miraculous little human who'd survived against the odds, who carried her mother's smile and her own fierce spirit. And he felt a gratitude so profound it was almost painful. "Because I'm remembering something important, sweetheart. About how the world works and about who we want to be in it." "What's that?" "That we're all in this together. And that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything." Emma considered this seriously, then nodded as if he'd revealed some fundamental truth of the universe. "Like when that lady stayed with you in the hospital when I was sleeping, Claire?" "Exactly like that." They drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in impossible colors. And Marcus thought about all the people he'd never meet who'd touched his life through their kindness to others. The woman on the highway, Claire at the hospital, Dr. Morrison and his fund, the social worker who'd found him job leads, the teacher who'd given Emma extra time to make up her project. An endless chain of human compassion, link after link, holding together the fabric of their existence. He pulled into their apartment complex. They'd found a better place, safer, with a landlord who'd worked with them on the deposit, and sat for a moment in the car, watching Emma gather her backpack and dinosaur drawings. The world was still hard, still uncertain, still full of struggles he'd have to face tomorrow and the day after that. But he wasn't facing them alone anymore. None of them were, because somewhere out there, people he'd never know were making choices to stop, to help, to see each other as fellow travelers in this brief and precious journey. And he was part of that chain now, a link in something larger than himself, connected to strangers through the simple, radical act of caring. Her name, that woman on the highway, was lost to time, forgotten in the chaos of emergency and recovery. But her legacy lived on in every person Dr. Morrison's fund helped, in every volunteer like Claire who showed up with compassion, in every parent like Marcus who learned that accepting help wasn't weakness but wisdom, and in every act of kindness that would ripple forward into an unknowable future. She was everywhere and nowhere, anonymous and eternal, a reminder that we all have the power to be someone's miracle, that sometimes the most profound impact we can have is simply to stop, to notice, to reach out a hand to a stranger and say, "You're not alone." And that, Marcus thought as he helped Emma out of the car and took her hand to walk inside, was the truest definition of humanity he'd ever known. Not the grand gestures or the headlines, but the quiet moments of connection, the decision to care when it would be easier not to, the recognition that another person's pain mattered as much as your own. Her name was lost, but her spirit lived on, in him, in Emma, in everyone they'd touch going forward. An endless echo of compassion, growing stronger with each repetition, proving that in a world that often felt dark and divided, there was still light, carried forward by ordinary people making extraordinary choices, one small kindness at a time. That was her gift. That was her legacy. That was, in the end, what it meant to be human.